Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again with the Crucible League announcement overview, and once again hoping to be the voice of reason for what looks like it's going to be a pretty sick league. Just going to go over basically the quick announcement, what's happened with the league, what's happened with some of the changes, a few opinions, etc. So to begin with, they gave us a live stream and showcased the Crucible League and the mechanic, and it looks really fun. Like, it's going to be similar to a ritual maybe, where you're in a pretty localized area, small zone, almost circular, fight a bunch of monsters, pretty tough monsters by the looks of it, maybe kind of reminiscent to a legion in that regard, and then you'll be able to alter one of your weapons as a bonus for completing the league mechanic. It'll give your weapons potential passive trees, these small little passive trees that just branch out, give you a couple of choices, a couple of forks to choose from, and it's just going to be raw power creep in the funnest form. Though, like, power creep I think is okay as long as it's done in a fun way and in a different enough way to make different choices and stuff, but it will definitely make our characters more powerful than ever before. On top of that, we've got some new Vaal skills, which so far look really crazy. Breach rework, Abyss rework, a couple of leagues that definitely need a bit of love, and I'm personally looking forward to the Abyss rework quite a lot. We then have some masteries that get replaced and added and removed and stuff to shuffle around the meta a bit. Saboteur and Pathfinder got reworked, which is pretty damn spicy. And then, of course, 1 week from now is when we get to play this and enjoy it in its fullest. So to begin with, it was the Crucible mechanic that was focused on, and what's mostly going to be the draw of the league, I think. It is a pretty damn cool looking mechanic. It looks fairly, clean aesthetically and all that, but the main thing is, of course, the little passive trees. Like I said, you're going to have a couple of choices to make here or there, and some of these look like they're going to be very powerful. They're going to take your item and potentially give it more damage, more attack speed, more utility, and in some cases really big stuff like additional links that are just going to damn near give you like 50% potentially more power to your item, by the looks of it anyway. We'll have to wait and see how rare some of these things are, but then there's more intricate systems for this as well, where you'll be able to combine weapons combine unique weapons. Unique weapons will also be able to have passive trees, and then you'll be able to combine two unique weapons to try and make an even bigger, fancier passive tree. But it definitely shines another spotlight on endgame unique weapons once again, where they're going to probably be pretty damn thick under the right circumstances. You can definitely see some huge Void Forges, for example, being made, Voltaxics, all kinds of crazy shit. It seems like a real fun endgame-ish sort of mechanic to chase towards perfecting the right item, getting the right RNG, and also grinding enough XP to get into the later passive tree options. Overall, yeah, looks like an absolute banger, and I think it should be the main focus for the league for everyone. Yeah, a few little adjustments here or there, but honestly, this is going to overshadow any of the negative by far. So with that, I'll quickly just go over the announcement itself, the other things that happened, and then the patch notes and what is kind of important, not important, and why people might be a bit upset, etc. So there's going to be an end game system there where you can find sort of a map thing that you go into. It's going to be really difficult, and that's where you'll be able to combine Crucible passive skill trees on items, as well as an even more end game version that will let you combine unique weapon passive trees, I think. So it's a bit of a chase thing there, but yeah, sounds like there's going to be a lot of customization and just overall stronger weapons, builds, and stuff than ever before. Need I remind you, we basically constantly get slight adjustments, nerfs, buffs, etc., and pretty much every league, player power is always at the furthest point it's ever been, and this one I think will be absolutely no exception. There's going to be Atlas gateway nodes. So the Atlas is going to have 3 sort of little portal nodes that just let you jump to the other side of the Atlas, and they look like they've been pretty conveniently placed. So right next to Eater of Worlds, for example, you grab your altars, you can then grab that, and go all the way over to the Searing Exarch area. And yeah, that should make the Atlas passive tree quite a bit more interesting to play around with and let you grab more of the things you want. Breach getting a revamp or an update, for the most part just becoming a bit faster, a bit flashier, bit more squish on what's happening with the breach stones, so they're going to be baseline much higher level, which means there's going to be less splinters to click because they're just going to be rarer, less breach hands to click and all that. Basically just making it a bit more streamlined to play with, because right now you open a breach, it might be a bit shit in density, it might take a bit of time even if you spec into it, and then on top of that you have to click like 20 splinters from all over the map, whereas this should be a nicer system because the breach stones themselves are now higher level, they're worth more, and there's less splinters around. It sounds like an okay change to the mechanic overall. Bit of the Atlas tree nodes for it seem, I don't know, kind of scuffed in some ways, but that's not a huge deal, I don't think. Abyss itself getting a bit of a rework as well. Every single abyssal depths you encounter is now going to contain a lich. The liches are a bit more powerful. Otherwise, the Stygian tower things can spawn outside of abyssal depths now. They can just, you know, snake around an abyss and then eventually give you an abyssal tower, and then you can get Stygian visors outside, which might mean you can get influenced Stygian visors again. We'll see about that. But otherwise, they did update some of the abyss uniques, and some of those updates to the abyss uniques are pretty damn spicy. Definitely worth looking at those and potentially building around some of them this time around. So that's something to definitely look at. Master and Evolve Meta. So they've given a good update to Saboteur and Pathfinder. Pathfinder less so, but still pretty big. Some really good shit happening here. 50% chance for flasks not consume charges. That means you will damn near infinitely sustain charges if you want to, especially if you're comboing it with 3 charges every 3 seconds. Other than that, the Wither one is pretty damn big, so 50% increased effect of Withered. That is huge for Chaos builds, and then a real convenient way of applying Withered, especially if you have a skill that uses it well enough, attacks really fast, etc. Master Surgeon sounds like it's actually going to be pretty damn insane as well. Life flask effects are not removed when unreserved life is filled, so it's like an enduring, persistent life flask. With the right scaling, with the right flasks and all that, that can give you like insane levels of sustain, like taking care of righteous fire in a button sort of a sustain. So we'll see how that pans out, but that seems to be a pretty big node as well. And then this one's a bit weird. It's going to be tough to fully utilize, but certainly some real powerful stuff in there. Crit, pen, and fizz as extra chaos. Whereas Saboteur, however, got a bit of an identity revamp. So yep, still going to be mines, still going to be traps, but on top of that, you have a real big trigger node and area damage node. And cooldown recovery node. So the trigger node gives you 35% less damage with triggered spells, so obviously a big nerf to your triggered spells, but you get level 20 summon trigger bots when allocated, which double your triggers. So that's a pretty large buff to any build that's going to be trying to do trigger stuff. And we're talking about cast on crits, maybe cast when damage takens, and spell slingers, I think. Then we've got Like Clockwork, which is 30% increased cooldown recovery rate, and then nearby enemies have 10 reduced cooldown recovery rate, so that means they won't cycle their attacks quite as quick. I feel like that might break some bosses, you know, in unintended ways, like bugged out, but 30 cooldown recovery rate's pretty damn big for some builds that really want more of that. And then you have Bomb Specialist. Hits have 20% chance to deal 50% more area damage, and 20% chance to take 50% less area damage from hits. Pretty good defensive node for certain things that do lots of area damage out there. Otherwise, that's a pretty fancy node for big, more area damage against mobs for certain things. Might cause much bigger shocks, cause much bigger ignites for some builds that you might want. Yeah, mostly the shock thing, I think. Not even sure the ignite thing's going to work. Either way, pretty good node. So then we have a few new Vaal skills. The one they've teased so far are very powerful indeed. Absolution, already a very strong skill for minion killing stuff, but then the way that the new Vaal Absolution looks is super cool. Turns one of your Absolutions into an Innocence-like figure, spams insane spells, does way more damage. Could potentially be a huge buff to the build overall. Arctic Armor, basically a new form of cheat death. If you've got the souls for it and you press it at some point when you know you're about to die, it's a 90% less damage taken from hits. It's an ice block from World of Warcraft. It's essentially not full immunity, but pretty damn close. You'll be able to tank like Maven Memory games and certain, Exarch Ball phase for a few seconds, etc. There'll be some good uses for this one, and it's definitely going to cheese quite a few mechanics. We then have Lightning Arrow, Vaal Lightning Arrow, that shoots crazy shit all over the map, and that looks like it'll help clear speed quite a lot, even though Lightning Arrow doesn't need it. But then on top of that, it's supposed to help out with single target too. And then Reap, Vaal Reap version here is just going to give you a few extra, kind of in the way on that one, a few extra charges when you use it. So 4 max blood charges for like 8 seconds or some shit, which means that the Reap builds that hit really hard are going to hit even harder for that time being. And then a few extra things like hits in a big area to start with, and I don't know, it's insane. It's going to make very strong builds indeed. We then have, move myself back, and Vaal Firestorm, which is a bit of a weird one. It causes out a bunch more meteors that spiral inwards towards target, so more single target potentially, but Firestorm's already very messy on frames, so I think this might just cause even more frame destruction, and then on top of that, burning ground on impact. Don't know about that one. Vaal Ice Shot, I'm really excited for this one. Vaal Ice Shot fires an icy arrow, creates multiple mirages of your character that also fire at the same target. The mirages persist for a few seconds, firing again whenever you use Ice Shot, so it just duplicates you with what looks like a bunch of extra clones, and this seems like it's going to be a really powerful single target boost. We'll have to wait and see the numbers and all that, but I'm looking forward to that one. It's got me excited to look at some Ice Shot again. And then Vaal Animate Weapon's going to summon a bunch of weapons off the ground that turn into unique endgame weapons or some shit. I don't know. Maybe that's good. Don't ask me. I'm not the right guy for that. We then have new unique items, so a bunch of chaos damage taken over time heals you instead while leeching life. So if you're taking chaos damage over time from sources like maybe self-poison and lots of it, you'll instead be healed while you're leeching life. So combo that with overleech or some shit, and can be a very powerful tool, I think. Don't know about this hat. Blood price, 24 reduced life, so it's a big penalty. You gain a lot of life regen, which is really cool. Almost immune to stun, and then reserves 8% of nearby enemy monster life. So it just basically means you are starting out the fight against any enemy, boss, monster, whatever, at around 90% life. So it's something, but I'm not too sure it's like worth using. It's going to be something to see. And then this is a really cool item. 183 increased bonuses gained from Equip Quiver. From what we've seen so far in their teaser, it goes up to at least 225%. So over a 200% threshold, which means if you've got a quiver that has like 2 additional arrows or some shit, you're going to get a lot of extra arrows. Or additional chain, or, damage over time multi. Who knows? There's going to be some pretty cool stuff that comes from this, and definitely an item that's going to be fucked around with. We then have, Become a Champion. So this is the thing that did have a few people a little bit smudge, and that is the Ruthless boss kill event. So essentially, at the start of the league, they sometimes do a boss kill event where they go, hey, first person to kill this thing wins some shit. Doesn't happen every league. This time around, they are doing that for Uber Exarch and Uber Eater of Worlds, but it's on Ruthless Hardcore Solo Self-Found. So that's something that damn near no one wants, but I think the idea is that the races are pretty short at this point, and people are pretty damn good, especially established with Gauntlet, that, you can throw anything at some of these top races, and they're going to get it done in a couple of days. So I suppose this is an attempt to slow the thing down, make it a bit more of a pinnacle challenge. It might be a bit misguided, and maybe no one actually wants to do it, or maybe no one even can do it, because it is a pretty tough challenge. I, as someone that doesn't race, don't really give a shit, and You know, it doesn't affect almost any of us. But as someone that might want to watch the races, I think this could actually be more exciting. If people participate, if people go for it, I think it's more exciting to see a race build over time as opposed to every single race to end in like a few days. Like, it'd be cool to keep track of someone's progress over the few weeks and see if they're going to get there. And one other thing is it changes the race. Instead of being a, you know, pure balls deep, get in there and spend 24 hours, then 20 hours, then 20 hours and kill it immediately, into potentially much more of a like relaxed, casual, I'm going to grind over the course of a few weeks for, you know, 6 to 10 hours a day and maybe get there. That's what I'm hoping anyway. Who knows? It could still just be a real quick thing with a couple of top races just getting there. But maybe no one does it. I don't know. It's a point of contention between people, but the big concern is the fact that it's Ruthless and not many people want it. And the fact that they said they wouldn't do Ruthless as like a main focal point of the game. This still kind of isn't a main focal point. This is a like real side thing, just a race, opt-in for anyone that thinks they're good enough, etc. You don't really have to do a race, and you know, there's been lots of them, and Ziz, you're still running gauntlets and stuff. You can do whatever you want with those. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see it as a big deal. I think it could be a good thing. I do agree that I don't want as much Ruthless in the game. Forced, I'm not sure this is really a forced Ruthlessing. It being one of like the main events that happened a month ago, I felt was more of a slight to us, because that's something that everyone's looking forward to and everyone wants to kind of play. And then it's like, hey, here's an event, it's Ruthless. And we're like, don't want to do that. Either way, it's something. My personal fantasy here is that the Kriparian shows up, slaps his massive gamer dong on the table, and wins this thing. I don't think that's going to happen because he doesn't really play hardcore for these things anymore. But who knows? Maybe he'll be fired up and slowly, methodically take down the Ruthless challenge over the next month and win this thing. We can only hope. But yeah, it doesn't affect much of us, and I don't think this should ruin your league. Everyone but Ziz. So anyway, challenge yourself in Ruthless. So that's just a few Ruthless changes that are coming too, in case you want to do that. You don't, it's not as fun, trust me. And then ExileCon coming later. Supporter packs look pretty damn cool. Especially a couple of things. I'll just mention one thing. From the cheapest one of the first one, Delve Bear. Delve Bear looks pretty fucking cool. Otherwise, there's a few cool things, but nothing too crazy. We then have the patch notes. Let me just quickly go over some stuff. Another big thing that people are kind of upset about is some leveling stuff that's happening, so early game changes. They've added a few new supports that you can fuck around with, nothing too worth writing home about, but could be interesting, like Prismatic Burst support. That could be a whole new build in and of itself, so that could be something fun to look into once we know the numbers behind it and all that. The sort of Mana Forged Arrow, so like an attack on attack, you'll trigger like an extra bow skill or some shit with your bow skill. That sounds like it could be pretty fun. But then they removed Onslaught Gem because like something about, what are we saying, wider variety of builds competitive for leveling. Like not everyone can really utilize, and you know, Onslaught makes it's a bit too like pigeonholed into what you've got to do. Not every build can use an Onslaught that well. Onslaught's basically mandatory, so they just basically rather remove it as a gem, which honestly doesn't affect a lot of us for the most part. We're not all using Onslaught immediately, and slowing us down by a teeny bit at the start of the game isn't going to kill you at all. So I wouldn't be too mad about that. Other than that, the thing people were pretty pissed about was the wand crafting recipe, wand and vendor recipe changes. So they removed the +1 wand things that you could craft for yourself from the vendor recipe, because essentially at the moment what you can do is, if you're an experienced enough gamer for your spell builds, craft a couple of those at the start and then not replace them until you're into maps, because it's good enough as it is, whereas they'd rather you keep upgrading your wands, your weapons, etc. And yeah, I think that's fine. I literally never used this thing. Most of us didn't. Like, saying this takes away early power from leveling from casuals or some shit is just misguided. Like, no, most people do not use this or care about this or need this. But either way, Wand's implicits got a little bit more powerful, I think. A bit of flat damage and stuff early on is quite powerful, though it depends on how much spell damage you're getting from your tree, etc. It might be a bit give or take. Ultimately, I think it is a balance in, in some sort. Fine. Scepters apparently are getting less attack speed because they're supposed to be more of a caster thing. So people are a bit upset potentially about early leap slam with scepters getting a bit slower for leveling. To counter that, I mean, you're getting faster attacks at level 8 now instead of level 18. So they did bring forward a few gems that make things a bit quicker in the leveling sense early on. The main one I'd say is Sniper's Mark at level 4 for range builds. That sounds pretty damn spicy. Anyway, yeah, I don't think this is much of an anything either. So that's pretty much it as far as, early game nerfs or some shit. You probably won't notice a difference, like, really. Other than that, what did we need to look at and talk about? Arcane Surge got more focus on cast speed than instead of more spell damage, which is fine. It's kind of a trade-off. Better cast speed, less damage. But it sounds like it could be pretty damn good with Hierophant. There's a lot of good extra increased effective Arcane Surge nodes now, and it might be a main support gem for certain builds, for sure. It looks very powerful under the right circumstances. Miscellaneous player balance. So Molten Shell got like half its absorb cut, taken away, but it's still very powerful. With a lot of armor, it's still going to be absolutely insane and help you face tank lots of things. Vaal Molten Shell, same thing. Other than that, anything else that really needs talking about? Bow attacks, additional arrow from Synthesis implicits. Quivers and bows gone. I never used it. Most of us never used it. It's very endgame-esque, and it no longer exists, I suppose, because Crucible currently will be giving you extra arrows and shit. And there's also an additional arrow or additional proj on the passive tree now. There's actually, an additional proj and an additional arrow on the passive tree. So some of that power has been taken away and put onto the passive tree, and that means everyone can have more power there. Other than that, a few Ruthless changes, a few stuff. We'll talk about the other thing that happened, and that is some small balance, nothing too huge. Spectral Throw will be hitting things more often now. Instead of 300 ms when it's rotating every 300 ms, it's now going to be every 225. That makes me excited to touch some Spectral Throw again. Might start it as a league starter. We'll have to wait and see. Lightning Tendrils basically got like a buff/nerf thing where its power got moved in a different way. Overall, if you look at my Lightning Tendrils build that I played and cleared Ubers with this league, that was very good. I think it's going to be about the same, maybe even a damage buff. Let's see. The other things I really wanted to look at was basically masteries, I think, because a lot of people are upset about those. Okay, so this is remove masteries and stuff. Added a few things. Yep. Okay, so the masteries, overall, there's a bunch of new stuff. There's some that was removed. A lot of the things that were removed were like reservation masteries from specific nodes like evasion, armor, but basically you will get that back in the form of mana mastery. So 12% increased mana reserve of skills on a mana mastery. Most builds will be able to afford and can take a 2-point mana node and then the mastery for it. So it's going to be a cost of 3 points, and you're losing 1 point from mastery that you wouldn't take from armor or evasion or some shit. So you're basically trading that point for this point and then gaining an extra 2 points of mana mastery or 2 points of mana node, and that's usually a pretty good utility for a build anyway. It kind of forces you in some cases to take that, and thus your build gets a bit more utility while getting that mana reserve. I don't think this breaks builds. I don't think this nerfs everything. I don't think this kills almost any build whatsoever. So the complaints that this was all nerfs to all auras and shit it feels a bit unfounded. I think this is still going to be perfectly fine and you'll be okay. Another one is the accuracy mastery, for example, that needs addressing. The precision accuracy mastery got removed. and people are saying, oh no, I got to spend more mana for precision, you'll just be able to level precision less if you want, and then take this one, which is huge, flat, extra accuracy. It makes up for it 1 for 1 point. So you basically haven't lost anything. We then have... I don't know what else there I really need to mention. Probably worth looking over in your own time. But claw masteries look like they could shake up the meta for claws. So for the past league, claws have been basically dead. Not too many people have been playing them compared to before because of like Nightblade nerf and stuff. But this could create kind of a claw meta, especially a dual wield claw meta. We've got like leech instant per equipped claw. 10% of leech is instant. If you've got a lot of leech, that's going to just make you basically unkillable. You've got attack speed bonus from dual wielding, doubled while wielding 2 claws. That does remind me of the leech mastery though as well. On the leech mastery, 10% of leech is instant. That could be absolutely massive for a lot of builds. I think there's going to be a pretty feisty meta shakeup with this, and there's a lot of good, there's a few bad. Overall, you get a lot of power creep from Crucible, and I don't think there's anything to worry about. A lot of viable builds right now. Melee, that a lot of people are complaining about, very viable, very fun. I played 4 or 5 melee characters this league. They are some of the most fun characters in the game at the moment. They struggle once they get to Ubers. That is understandable to be mad about, but you can still do it, and it's Uber content. It doesn't need to be cleared by everything. Either way, up until that point, the melee builds are honestly some of the most fun ones, and I think I'm going to be giving Build of the League to one of the melee builds, which is Volcanic Fissure. So yeah, is what it is. I think there's still a lot of good melee out there. It's just that this time around, and in recent times, they're not really doing balance passes in the form of this skill gets 5 extra damage, this skill gets 5 less damage. They're basically reshifting metas through other things that encourage you to think about skills that you've liked, skills that you've played in the past in a new light, and it really does shift the meta in that way. There's going to be new uniques, shifts metas, there's going to be new masteries, new ways of building. All of that definitely shifts metas. And then Vaal skills are pretty big too. The other thing people are complaining about is the Lightning Mastery going away, the non-crit one. That's going to be put on one of the Ash amulets, so I think if you still really want that, that'll be a justifiable use. But otherwise, yeah, I think that's a bit unfortunate to leave, and so is the +1 chain on it. But certainly not the end of the world. Yeah, lots of mastery stuff to still look at, but I'm not going to go over each one individually. And then if I have a quick look at the overview, I think that is mostly all I really wanted to mention. So let me change my cam real quick because it is out of focus. Hopefully that wasn't for too long. If I was blurry for a lot of that, I apologize. I'm not reshooting this. We have what I think is going to be an absolute banger of a league. I am looking forward to it. I think Sanctum was the best league we've had to date. As a whole for the game, the league mechanic was really good and balance was in a good place for a lot of builds. And like I said, player power is the highest it's ever been. And that's pretty much true for almost every consequential league at the moment. The mechanics that come from the league, that come from various uniques and shit, just keep ramping us up and up. And there's still going to be a lot of crazy stuff happening from Crucible and from a lot of these mastery changes. Just because it wasn't raw, you know, shift buff to everything doesn't mean there's not a huge meta shift and there isn't different ways of building. And it definitely still means a lot of your characters here are very viable because not enough has changed. No big like sweeping underarching system has changed that's pulled the floor out from a lot of builds. It's yeah, I don't know what to say. Like this is just I see absolutely no reason to be mad at the moment. Maybe some mastery stuff you might be upset about. I understand. It certainly isn't worth quitting the league over, quitting PoE over, some shit like that. I personally am once again re-excited for a league after seeing the announcement. Maybe I'll be playing some D4 at some point as well, and happily doing that as well as playing PoE. But look, I think PoE is still looking pretty damn good, and I think the new league mechanic is going to be an absolute beast to tinker with and get more powerful with. Either way, hopefully that helped excite you a bit, calm you down a bit, etc. That's all I've got time for. I'm tired. I had a long 11-hour stream with this stream. reading all the fun comments about the league to come. So I'm going to end it there. Hope you guys are excited for the new league. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.